Hey guys, what's up? It's your boy K Breezy here. Hope that all of you watching this having an awesome day. And in today's video, I'm going to be going over some of the best settings that you can use to dominate the competition and improve your overall game in Apex Legends. With the recent update that gave console players the ability to finally customize their keybinds, it's now easier than ever to get the perfect setup for your own playstyle, though things may seem a bit overwhelming at first. And hey, feel free to tweak these settings to your own liking, because while I feel like these are the best settings for performance, everyone is unique in the way they play, so feel free to change things where needed. Before we hop straight into my custom controller layout, let's take a look at some of the general settings that you can change right now to see a major improvement to your game. So the first setting we're going to be taking a look at is the crosshair damage feedback setting, which you can find under gameplay. Now by default, this setting is just set to X, which functions just like your normal hit marker indicator in other first person shooter games. But if you want to improve this setting tenfold, all you need to do is adjust the slider and set it to X with icon. By doing this, you'll be able to see your normal hit marker indicator along with an indicator that shows whether or not if the enemy has a shield, and if so, what shield level. Enabling this setting is really important because the way you engage an enemy with common armor versus legendary armor is going to be very different in most situations. Next up, what you want to do is change your damage number setting from the default option to both floating and stacking. What this does is not only show the amount of damage that you're doing per shot, it is also going to show the total amount of damage you've done to that enemy within that time span. Using this setting is really a game changer because now you don't have to try and do quick math in your head and easily avoid missed callouts because the numbers weren't added up right. And very briefly, I'm going to go over this next section of settings because while I keep these on the default option for myself, some players may not find this to be the best setting for them. The first of these settings is the response curve, and it's something that you may not find very commonly in your settings in other games. But what this does is affect the way your input moves based on your controller analog sticks. Classic is what most console players use because it's a very conservative style and what Respawn recommends for that classic Respawn feel. Steady works to combine fast aim and furtive movement without much of a trade-off of either. Fine aim is what you want if you're looking to improve those really small gradual movements and hit more shots. High velocity basically puts the pedal to the metal with all your movements and makes your input much greater than usual, meaning that it reduces your need for large heavy movements on your controller. And the final setting, linear, is based solely off movement from the controller with no input from the system whatsoever. Moving on though, my look and movement dead zones are on small, which is the default setting and affects how much your controller drifts when aiming or moving in game. You don't really want to mess with these settings because you want the smallest amount of drift as possible to avoid throwing off your aim. The only reason you may have to tweak it though is if you're using an older controller and the analog drift is off due to it not being calibrated correctly. The final general setting I keep on default is field of view because I feel like it's more natural and doesn't affect your depth perception. However, this is something that almost every pro PC player uses because it allows you to effectively see more of the game at once. But I mean, hey, it's up to you and whether or not if you want to play on a more casual or competitive level. One more thing I almost forgot to mention before I get into my actual controller binds is sensitivity, which really depends on what your playstyle is in game. Yes, a higher sensitivity will in theory allow you to react faster, but in most scenarios you have to give up the quality of aim because it gets harder to fine tune shots quickly and especially at those longer ranges. A lower sensitivity will definitely improve your accuracy, but now you're trading off that fast reaction time if it's too low. My personal setting is at 5 because at this level, I'm able to not only respond quickly to enemies in front of me or sneaking up behind me, but I can easily track enemies with my shots and control the recoil on the weapons that I'm using. One of the best ways to find your perfect sensitivity is to turn off aim assist and then go into the training range and start from the highest possible sensitivity and go down until you can effectively hit the targets quickly while still maintaining control. And with all of that out of the way, I'm going to be showing you guys my own personal controller binds that really help to improve my game and really make a difference when I'm in game. In all honesty, I didn't change too much, but I did swap my melee and crouch buttons. By having these two swapped, I can slide and crouch strafe much easier without having to compromise my aim or risk being caught off guard when my finger isn't on the analog stick. And most people crouch and slide much more often than they melee, so having it as a circle is still convenient while you prioritize the essential keybinds to the functions that really need it. The other major thing that changed is my jump button and tactical ability. I know it looks kind of weird, but just like the purpose of swapping my crouch and melee, having swapped my jump and tactical ability prioritizes the key controller locations for where my hands are naturally placed to the functions that I use the most. Being able to jump while aiming is something that, unless you have a scuff controller, is really hard and just ruins your aim. But with this, you can jump strafe much easier, and combining it with R3 as your crouch increases your movement speed across the map due to it being much more fluid. And most of the time while you're using a tactical ability, you're already going to be vulnerable for a second or two, so putting it as X doesn't make too much of a difference. Two ways to avoid having to change your keybind settings at all, however, involve buying a scuff controller or playing claw. Both of these are valid alternatives, but the first is going to cost you a whole lot of cash, and the second one might cost you some hands. But all jokes aside, these are my personal favorite settings for Apex Legends on console. I did my best to try and throw in a mix of beginner and advanced settings that I hope truly do make a difference the next time you hop into Kings Canyon. Also, a great way to test out any of these settings is to jump into the training grounds, because it's honestly the best way to try out anything, unless you don't mind dying over and over in public matches. One last thing before I go is, feel free to let me know any suggestions that you would make, or your own personal controller binds that you use in game. I'm sure many of you have settings that are different than mine, and may even be more optimized, so be sure to let me know down below. But if you're new to the channel, be sure to subscribe and hit that bell icon, because then you don't have to worry about missing out on some of the latest Apex Legends news or posts from this channel. And thank you guys again so much for watching, and as always, it's your boy KB, signing off. Peace.